Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. But today we're going to be doing more public policy than politics, I think, because our guest is Bruce Leone. He's running for the board at CPS, that is CPS Chicago Public Schools. He wants to be one of the 10 elected board members come November 5, and 11 others of the 21-member board will be appointed by none other than the guy who's very much in the news, Mayor Brandon Johnson. And so, Bruce, let's just get right down to it. We'll tell people more about you as we get into the show.
Sure.
But what's the most important thing you were running on when you run in the 2nd District to represent all of the folks in the 2nd District, in a sense, everybody in the city of Chicago, but especially everybody who lives in the 2nd District of Chicago or the 2nd District of CPS, the most important issue?
Jeff, first of all, thank you for letting me be on your show, and thanks for the service you're doing by bringing public policy to the people of Chicago. It really is important. I think there's 5 key issues that I'm running on that I feel is important, not just for the people of the 2nd District, but I do feel that I'm also representing all of the city of Chicago when I'm sitting on the school board, and that is performance, the student performance levels. Are we getting what we're paying for? Also, there's an issue right now with financial transparency. There's discussion about a payday loan that's going to be taken out at 11.95%. And Jeff, you know and I know payday loans are not a good thing. It doesn't show good credit, and it's going to put the city in further financial in distress. I also am running on the fact that I'm an experienced board member, that I'm independent of the mayor and the CTU, which is a big issue right now going on, as you know, with the mayor firing and now hiring his own people. It doesn't make for a board that's governed according to the best governance laws of a board. And lastly, I want to make sure kids are safe at school. We've got to make sure that kids are not being bullied. They're not being. There's not anti-Semitism. There's not any kind of security issues that would cause a kid to be afraid in school. Because if you're afraid, you can't learn. So those are my platform issues that I believe are not just for the 2nd District, but for the whole city of Chicago. You want to make sure that your margins are good, that your customers are getting a good value for what they're paying for, that your pricing is appropriate, and that you've got a good game plan, a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and you've got all the KPIs every month that you can check on to make sure you're hitting those numbers.
KPIs are?
Performance measures.
Key performance indicators.
Key performance indicators, correct.
Right. We hear 10 to 20%. We hear this from Wirepoints, hear it from others. Basically, over the last 20 years, and certainly the last 5 or 6, we see 10 to 20% of the students at CPS, the Black and Hispanic students that make up 85% of the population, reading at grade level, doing math at a similar number, being proficient in math, 10 to 20%. To me, that says 80%, if you're on the CPS board, 80% of your customers, you're not performing for them at all. You are failing. The kids aren't failing. The system is failing. The teachers, the administrators, the superintendent. Isn't that something the board should be focusing on?
Well, certainly one of the major things. But Jeff, I want to just tell you that one of my frustrating things, and I've done a number of forums with my opponents, is that they often talk about the stakeholders being the parents, the teachers, and the students. I'm the first one that said, there's more stakeholders. There's taxpayers and there's business. And let me explain. I ran a business in Westchester. It was a human resource outsourcing company. We started with 2 employees. We sold the company to Shore Capital at 160. Most of our jobs were entry-level jobs, benefit specialists, payroll specialists, people that HR assistants. And we were dependent on hiring kids that could come in and write an email and do some basic computer skills. Business has a vested interest in making sure that we get well-educated kids. If we want to be a competitive city internationally, we've got to have a school system that can feed business, kids that can read and write and do computers. And so I witnessed that firsthand, where people couldn't write sentences correctly, or they couldn't read a document correctly. And so I'm the first person that said there's taxpayers and there's business that also has a vested interest. And of course, you would hope that parents would be concerned about their kids not reading, and the students themselves and the teachers. But somehow that's been lost in the conversation.
Well, right. There are a whole panoply of interests. And certainly, to me, top of that interest would be the parents and the kids.
Right.
Right? Because if you can't read and you can't do math proficiency, you've just heard from somebody who knows, because he needs those people, or he needed them for his past business that he sold,
Right.
but he worked hard at for, what, more than 3 decades?
3 decades, yeah.
Right. So you know what it is to go out. Bruce Leon knows what it is to go out looking for people who, as you say, can write well, can do math well, the basics, right?
Correct.
And if you can't read, could you hire somebody for your business who couldn't
They
read?
could not survive in our business if they can't do any of those 3 things. One of the conversations that's come up a lot is that the mayor wants to degrade the charter and the special enrollment schools, the magnet schools, that are really the gem of our city. I can tell you, in my district, I live 600 feet from a school called the Decatur Classical School, which is a special enrollment school. And if they were to make that into a neighborhood school and take away that special status, those parents would probably move to the suburbs. And yet my opponents constantly talk about that they're taking the good kids out and that there shouldn't be this elitist system. These are the schools that are really working. And so my idea of social equity with these schools is that you bring the lower performing schools up. Don't cut down those schools that are performing well, the charters, the special enrollments, and the magnet schools. And truthfully, it's very interesting. The CTU opponent that I'm running against in my district, she has 1 child. He went to Disney. And Stacy Gates, who is the head of CTU, her kid goes to private school. So it's very interesting. School choice works for them, but yet when they come on their platform, they said, no, we should push all the resources just to the neighborhood schools, and maybe even shut down some charters and shut down some of these magnet schools. And that's crazy. Schools like Lane Tech, Whitney Young, these are the highest performing schools in the city. And we should use them as a model to try to bring everybody else up instead of shutting them down. You know, I used to tell my kids on the playground when they were kids, you don't make yourself bigger by pushing somebody down. You bring other people up. So cutting down the good schools is not the solution. Schools like New Hope, a charter school that needs more space, and it's got an enrollment that is over enrolled, and they're looking for more space, and they could use some of the underutilized schools right now. But those schools are performing really well, and people love it that send their kids there. The college performance in those schools is way above national averages. So I agree with you. Don't cut down those schools that are performing well just to put all the resources into the neighborhood schools.
I would think social equity would be a concern for all students,
Yep.
all 323,000, I think there are, that each student reaches his or her potential.
Yep.
Potential.
Find the right school for each kid.
And in fact, don't you find the right school. You say how much do we spend per kid per year?
$30,000.
So you say to the kids and the parents, here's $30,000. We're spending it on your kid right now. You take the $30,000 and you go to the school of your choice, right? It's called school choice, school vouchers. You like that idea?
So here's the thing. We can't really talk about vouchers right now. That's a word that sort of gets people nervous. So we have to start from the beginning, which is basically start with the special enrollment schools, the magnet schools, the charter schools, which are all within the system anyways, okay? And let's make sure that those schools excel. As you know, we had a program called Invest in Kids, which allowed the poorest of the poor kids to even have a choice to go to a private or parochial school if they wanted to. And by the way, they were given a scholarship of $14,000, which means every kid who opted into that system actually saved the city $16,000. And yet the CTU squashed that program. And I was active to try to keep that alive. It was a very important program to my community in the 50th Ward in the 2nd District. And the reason it was squashed, in my opinion, was that those schools stayed open during COVID for the most part. And as you know, the CPS schools were closed for 77 straight weeks. Okay, my daughter's a nurse. She had to go every day to work. People that were police officers had to go to work. And we had to find a better solution. I can tell you at Tandem, when I was dealing with this, many of the people, and we have a very diversified workforce, many Hispanic, we have about 40% Hispanic because many of our companies were manufacturers and they needed Hispanic speaking people when they called on the phone, and Spanish, to deal with benefits, very complicated to deal with benefits or HR if it's not in your native language. So many of them were single moms, and you know what it was like for them when all of a sudden their kids are home for almost 2 years. I mean, we were in a position where we almost had to open a daycare at our company just to help mitigate the situation. And yet other schools stayed open, and that really upset.
What were these schools that stayed open? How do you categorize them?
They were the private schools for the most part.
Private schools.
And parochial schools. And they just made the decision that they had to find a safe way to keep kids at school.
So they were able to do it.
And
They
I
found
think-
a safe way.
Absolutely.
Nobody's shown that it was unsafe.
Nobody died. Nobody got sick.
And their kids did better because they were learning better. Almost everybody agrees the attempt of CPS to do remote learning didn't work at all.
I've talked to many people in the African American community. One of my favorites is Pastor Chris Harris, who does an amazing job in Bronzeville. My family foundation supports his Turn Center. He's a great guy. He told me, COVID, people that left for 2 years, if you're in ninth grade and you leave for 2 years and your house isn't set up with technology and you don't have Wi-Fi and you don't have all the best computers, right? The odds of getting them to come back to school, we lost a lot of kids during that time period, okay? And so because of that, the CTU decided to squash this program, which was a very successful program. So, in my mind, we need to start from the basics, which is let's make sure that our magnet schools are funded. They're not taken away. One of the ways the mayor is trying to help hurt those schools is they're taking away the transportation that was given to them, because many times these aren't walkable schools. So for instance, my block, which is in Restaurateurs Park, I have a number of kids that go to Lane Tech and to Whitney Young, and they were able to get some kind of transportation. Well, they took that transportation away last year. Now, those parents and those kids are so motivated, Jeff, that they get up at 4:30. I see them. They get up at 4:30 in the morning, and they'll take 2 buses, an L train, and another bus to get to Whitney Young. But it would have been a lot nicer if we would have been able to provide all the students in CPS with transportation, which right now is, as you may or may not be aware, the transportation has not been even set up for this year for even regular schools.
People, if they're looking to cut costs, 87%, one of our prior guests, Michelle Pierre, who's running in the 1st District,
Right.
she said, and she's been in education, the world of education, for
Very smart
quarter
lady.
of a century.
Very smart lady.
She said one number put at 87% of the costs, of the total costs being spent on public schools is for personnel, mainly teachers, administrators, but mainly teachers. So, we raised the average salary in the 2019 contract,
Yep.
so that by 2024, the average salary would be almost $100,000 per teacher. The average could be 120, 130,000.
10 months.
So, look at the cost of busing these kids to a really good school that's doing very well and helping these kids reach their potential. And that's the cost they focus on. And the board's going along with it to hurt kids who are at select enrollment schools.
Jeff, I want to give you an interesting idea why I think it's important to have a business person on the board. And by the way, back in the days of Daley, I talked to a guy named Norm Bobbins, who's one of the premier bankers of the city. He was on the board for 10 years. He said the board always had outside people, lawyers, business people. So when I was talking about the busing and why they haven't started the busing this year, they're having a hard time finding bus drivers. The issue came up that Amazon and FedEx and UPS, they're taking all the drivers at $80, $90 an hour, and you can work 10 hours a day, and you can work weekends and overtime, and they can't get bus drivers at $21 an hour, right? Who have to go through a thorough background check, which I for sure don't want to eliminate that. But you need creative business minds to figure out how can we get drivers when we need them for the kids. Maybe we make a deal with these Amazons and these UPSs to take some of their drivers and to use them during the morning and the afternoon hours. And Amazon, and they might be willing to, a corporation might be willing to help subsidize that in order to make sure the schools are better, right? But nobody's thinking like that, right? All they're thinking about is we can't afford it, therefore nobody has any buses, even for the neighborhood schools right now. So, there's just not a lot of creative thinking, problem solving, and yet we're $1 billion short in the budget, as you know. And when they come up with this new teacher's contract, we could be even further in debt. And they're asking for outrageous amounts of money.
How much are they asking for? Do you know?
27%. And I asked my staff.
27% increase over
3 years.
3 years.
And
That's an average of 9% increase a year.
And I asked my staff at Tandem HR, who administers to 16,000 employees in the Chicago area, we compile all kinds of data. What is the average increase this year? And it's somewhere between 3.5% and 4%. So again,
The average increase in what?
In salary.
In salary.
And yet they're asking for double.
In the private sector.
Yes.
And the CPI, went up a few years ago from 1.4% when former President Trump was there. Right. It went from 1.4% under Biden to 7 or 8%, but now the CPI is down to about 3%.
Right.
So these folks, now that the contract, it had a short blip, which is painful, and much of it's still hurting the country at large, but nevertheless, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is down 3%. People are projecting that perhaps is likely to stay, and they want a 9% per year increase.
And basically, he's getting a whole board that's going to be just, when you talk about governance, there's no brick wall between CTU anymore. I can't imagine a negotiating session when both sides are negotiating from the same hand. Their leadership has really taken this too far in terms of
Chicago Teachers Union.
Yeah, the leadership.
Who's the president there? Stacey Davis Gates.
As they've gotten involved.
I'll just say one thing because we kind of passed over it quickly. You mentioned it. Stacey Davis Gates has criticized private schools sharply for being racist. We shouldn't in any way have school vouchers because they would be racist.
Anti-gay, right?
Bunny thing's wrong. And where does Stacey Davis Gates sends at least one of her kids to a private school.
Correct.
Now, how does she qualify for the exception that the other 323,000 students don't qualify? How does she qualify that she gets to send her kid to a private school?
That's a great question. If she comes on your show, will you please ask her that question?
Somebody should ask her. I'd love to ask her that. So, but I just say another point, because you said, man, Jeff, we can't get to private schools because that makes some people nervous.
Well, I think
I would just say, really, with all due respect, Bruce, make them nervous because you told me 5 minutes ago that during COVID, the private schools stayed open and the kids benefited and the public schools didn't. Do you think maybe we should make those people nervous?
So,
hold on, one other thing, and then you can respond.
Sure. Because
you referred to Invest in Kids, which was killed off by the CTU.
Correct.
Had only 10,000 students being saved.
The poor kids.
Poorest of the poorest going to private schools and benefiting, and they killed off that program, 10,000 students.
Correct.
Do you think maybe we should try, if we have school choice, to include private schools along with the charters and other public schools in that choice? Do you think you want to reconsider? Maybe we should try?
I'm not suggesting that it's not a good effort. What I'm suggesting is my mandate is running for the board of CPS. And so therefore I have to focus on the choice within the CPS system, which there's a lot of choice right now that we have to make sure is protected. If we can get the conversation going, especially when we go to a fully elected board in 2026, yes, then we can start to talk about a more robust atmosphere. But right now, my mandate really is to focus on improving the reading scores, the math scores, and just basically, we talked about KPIs. How about this? 43,000 staff members, 20,000 of them are non-teaching. During COVID and since COVID, the student population has gone down 50 to 60,000, yet the staff has gone up 7,000. How can we improve the performance of the students and make our schools better, more competitive, to make a great international city? And that's really my mandate, is to help figure out how we can, as a board, move in that direction. And certainly firing the CEO and all the good staff that he has there for no reason other than you just want a political reason, or you want to take a payday loan out at 12%.
So you're referring to what's in the news as we tape this
Correct.
on October 7th that we heard this morning. You and I were busy getting ready for this.
Correct.
But we heard that the mayor held a press conference. Did he ask for the resignation formally of all of the 7 current board members?
Apparently, there was.
Or did he just ask for it and he go ahead and said he was going to appoint in their place? I don't know.
What I've heard is that last Thursday at the board meeting, he thought they were going to dismiss Pedro Martinez. They did not, and therefore they resigned on Friday because they
resigned.
They know that he's got a solid contract.
Okay.
There's no performance issues. Jeff, if you're sitting down, check this out. I've done HR for 30 years. I've never had this happen. Somebody leaked his personnel file to WBEZ. This is just so
Somebody
unprofessional.
leaked whose personnel file?
The CEO's, Pedro Martinez.
Pedro Martinez.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the kind of shenanigans that are going on. And today, you're right. He elected it. I haven't heard all the news. I did get some people in the political world sent me that nobody was vetted. He got his own people. And one of the people actually lives in
None of the appointees to the board were vetted.
None of the appointees are vetted. And one of them actually lives in Cal City. And the mandate is they have to all live in the city proper. So, you know, we're becoming the laughing stock. The New York Times ran an article. The Wall Street Journal ran an article today. I'm embarrassed, and I feel like Chicago's a great city. We have to start getting it back to that level. And this is professionalism.
So it's your understanding that the mayor, Brandon Johnson, is upset with the current board because they wouldn't take out this payday loan. You're calling it a payday loan, high interest short-term loan. Why does he want that loan so much? Do you know?
He wants the school to pay for some of the non-teaching staff. I don't know. There's been some agreements back and forth, but of course he's got his own budget issues. The school already is $1 billion in deficit. So
if you were on the board, would you stay there and fight it, or would you resign?
I would never agree to a payday loan. I've already stated that publicly.
So he's hoping that by removing these 7, he'll appoint people. They'll do what he wants, which is to take out this loan, and gosh knows whatever else he wants.
Fire the CEO and hire somebody 4 weeks before
he wants
election.
He wants the new board to fire Pedro Martinez.
Correct. And
because
hire
Pedro
somebody
was against this loan too.
Was against the loan, correct.
And so, but don't they have laws that say in his contract? Not a law. It probably says he can't be fired unless for cause.
Correct.
What does that mean? Was there cause here?
It was not. And that's why I think the board didn't fire him.
He, the mayor, is making Chicago the laughing stock of the nation. Did I get that right? Is that what you said?
I did say that. And that is not just my words. It was in the Wall Street Journal today, Monday, October 7th. It was in the Wall Street Journal. That exactly.
So instead of talking about the stuff we're talking about, the percentage of kids who can't read,
schools.
Percentage of kids who can read at grade level, 10 to 20%, doing what's necessary, working with the board to see what the reforms are that are necessary, working with the board to see what the reforms are. The superintendent and the mayor actually may be working together, or at least letting the board and the superintendent be independent and come up with the reforms.
Correct.
This is all a distraction that's been dominating the news, and really, it's not a thoughtful way for the mayor to act.
No.
Would that be putting it
It's not a
simply?
professional way.
Yeah.
And again, he's never run a business.
And if you were on the board now, you basically would stand up to the mayor and you would say what you just said
here. I would tell all the other board members, here's protocol for how you handle the, honoring somebody's contract that you have, making sure that you do things correctly. And really, our job is to make sure that the CEO is performing. And apparently, from what I've heard, he certainly has not done anything that would be fireable. He's actually got some excellent people working around him. And I would want to work with that CEO, and to make all these distractions, it's just going to hurt the schools, the parents, teachers. It's a distraction, as you said. It's a great word used. It's just a distraction from what really the problems are.
So you think if the board really put the pedal to the metal and really worked hard at it,
Yes.
maybe in 2 years they could at least get the percentage of kids reading and doing math
We can start
proficiently,
solving the big problems.
maybe get it up to 30 or 40%?
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that
You
be
think,
amazing?
would that be a good goal?
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
I have to get more, but I would say that would be a very good, we call that a big, hairy goal, right?
$10 billion budget, maybe you can knock it down to $9 billion. Just be more efficient, not hurt, improve the quality of education, lower the cost.
Maybe
Is
some
that
of
what
the
you want to
overhead.
do? Yeah?
You know, I'll tell you just on the
Well,
overhead.
just real quickly, because we know the underutilization,
Right.
you're running against several people, one of whom is endorsed by the CTU, Chicago Teachers Union, right? That person is going to go down the line with the Chicago Teachers Union.
She said it openly just last Saturday.
She wants to give
lockstep and
the
barrel.
mayor whatever he wants, give the CTU whatever they want. Is that right?
Correct.
You want to do the opposite. You want to be independent.
And
You
the
want to
other
be
two are
thoughtful.
allies of the mayor, and they're, progressive, radical progressive, and really they look at these issues. If you were to show them the scores, they would come up with all kinds of reasons. Well, these people grow up in high crime areas, and their parents aren't home, and there's all these social issues that they would claim is the reason why these schools.
And yet there are
performing.
parochial schools, take the kids from the same area.
Put them in a charter school, yep.
A bunch of other places. Charter school takes kids from the
Especially
same
Lawrence
area,
School, magnet
and they outperform despite the fact that all of these socioeconomic issues exist. Isn't that funny? The charter school can do it, but the public school can't.
Right.
Well, excuse me, the charter school is the public school, so the charter school can do it, but the traditional neighborhood school
Correct.
within CPS
Correct.
can't. And so you've made it clear what you're running on.
It's October 7th.
Yeah.
One of the things that the school's done, and it's almost numbing to me, is since October 7th, they've taken us aside. Stacey Gates and Jackson have said that it's important that the school actually side with Hamas. They have allowed students to walk out twice to join protests. They're going to make a Nakba Day, an official day, a service day. They've told their candidates that they have to become proficient in the Palestinian cause and the Hamas cause, which is a complete, I don't know, it's a non-issue. But the Jewish students have been at risk. I've gotten calls from parents at Bell School. One parent, her 8th grade daughter's hair was cut off when she refused to go on a protest. Teacher did nothing. Teachers come to class wearing kippahs. This is all just the kind of things that we need to end. We need to focus on the kids and the performance and not bring in all these other societal issues that really should be left to the voters. And therefore, what I'm asking the voters is, let's have some independent, experienced, business-minded people who can actually right the ship, get the performance up, get the numbers correct. Don't raise taxes. Don't take out payday loans. And we can start moving in the right direction instead of the direction we're moving in now.
Thank you so much, Bruce Leone, for coming
Thank
here
you,
and
Jeff.
expressing your views thoughtfully. And we're not endorsing, but when we hear views and they seem thoughtful, we'll say that, okay?
Thank you so much for having
And
me.
for taking time, and more importantly, telling our viewers, your potential voters in the 2nd District and your potential supporters across the city of Chicago, what your views are to see if they support it. So if you can, come back before November 5th,
you
give
so
us
much.
more. And you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.